Hello, and welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today we're going to talk about how our dogs can feel grief too. I stumbled across an article. This is where most of my podcasts come from. I find a great article and I'm like, oh, I have to share this with the world. But it kind of like put me into a little bit of a rabbit hole of researching grief in pets. And I have had my own experiences with watching pets grieve too. So I thought I would share this article, which I'll put in the description, obviously, and some other information I have found on pets grieving. All right. So before I get into that, obviously, I have to do my due diligence here and remind you all that I have a Patreon. Patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. I would love it if you would come support me in this podcast. I have been taking some time to kind of keep track of the amount of time I spend on working on this podcast, and it's a lot. I spend a lot of time on this podcast, and I don't do ads. I don't do sponsorships. I did have BetterHelp for a little while, and that, as far as I know, that's still around. If you go to betterhelp.com/Nikki the Death Doula, you can get some awesome help, but it would help me too. So there's that, but I don't really do sponsorships or ads. Will I one day? I don't know, maybe. But right now I don't get paid specifically for this podcast. Any support for keeping this podcast going is coming directly from my Patreon. So you can find that at patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula, and you would be helping me not only with this podcast, but the main reason I have that Patreon is so that I can provide pro bono work for those who cannot afford my services. I have been contacted by some organizations that support the homeless here in the Central Ohio area, and there are homeless people that are dying too. It's not just rich people in nice homes. Homeless people are dying too, and they need help processing their grief and their loss and their diagnosis and their imminent death just as much as anybody else does. But they don't have money to pay for such things, and I want to help them as much as I can. So you can help me help them by supporting me at Patreon. There are tiers as low as $1 a month, up to $50 a month. Or if you want to give me more, I'll take it. And you can get some other perks. We can work something out. But there's some great benefits out there. If you come in at the $50 a month tier for Patreon, you can get a free coaching session with me each month. So if you need a little help too, you can get that for just $50 a month. All my tiers get grief affirmations once a week. And the middle and higher tiers, you get access to my podcast a week early, and I'll give you a shout out here on the show. I'll say your name and say how amazing you are for supporting me and supporting my work. All right, that's enough. You're not here to listen to me talk about you giving me money. You're here to learn about our dog's grief. Now, this specifically for this episode, it's about grief in dogs, but there is grief in other pets as well. I have seen it myself personally. I've heard of it anecdotally, and I have found some other information on grief with cats. I haven't seen much on grief in other pets, but I have zero doubt in my mind that all of our companions, our non-human companions, feel grief. I have no doubt of that whatsoever. So let's talk about our furry canine friends and how they experience grief and wide ranges of emotions. There are definitely people out there that would say pets don't have feelings. Pets don't understand feelings. Pets don't have emotions. They don't feel the same things we do. And those people are wrong. I'm just going to say it. This is not a matter of opinion. This is just straight up true. If anybody who I've ever met who's had a pet will tell you that our pets have emotions. They feel things. Now, we do absolutely do a little bit of anthropomorphism where this is more like when you look at a building with odd-shaped windows, you say that building's smiling. It's a building, it's not smiling. And we do that sometimes, especially with pets, the way their mouths look like they're smiling, but they might not be happy. Or dogs when they show their teeth and you're like, oh, they're clearly upset. But my husband their family had a dog that would show its teeth all the time, and it was literally smiling. It was not angry. It was not growling. It was smiling. So, but we do anthropomorphize our pets sometimes and say that they're feeling things that they may not be. But pets do feel things. Pets have emotions. And dogs specifically, we tend to pin them as just always happy, right? They come in, their tail's wagging, they look like they're smiling, they're jumping to meet you, and we just have this feeling of dogs being eternally happy. And that's not always the case. Sometimes dogs can be sad too, right? Especially in the case of a pet losing their person or another pet. I'll share anecdotally a story. I talk incessantly about my cat who passed away back in 2021, Yuna. And when I was married to my first husband, he had a cat that he had, prior to us moving in together, named Buddy. And Buddy was such a cute little stinker. He was very playful. He was still very much a kitten. And when we started living together, he brought Buddy. And Yuna, constantly just the old grumpy lady from the time she was born, did not like him, did not tolerate him well. I can't say she didn't tolerate him well. She tolerated him. She accepted that he was there. She didn't like him though. And he would pin her down and lick her and clean her. And she would have this look on her face like, oh my God, get this cat off of me. But I knew she was loving it. But Buddy was very sick. He had feline leukemia. And we came back from a vacation and he was very sick. He was having trouble breathing. His heart had expanded, basically. His heart swelled up so much that it was compressing his lungs. And you don't need to know the details. But long story short, my ex-husband had to take Buddy into the vet and have him put down. And he was with him. He was holding him the whole time. And when Buddy left, I could see Yuna go to the front window, and she never did that. Like, if we took him to the vet or whatever, she was just like, whatever, he's not here. Thank God, I get a break. But she knew something was wrong. And when he left with Buddy, she went to the window and watched them leave. And she sat by that window. I'm not kidding. She sat by that window for a week waiting for him to come back. And she just acted differently. She was always like kind of lazy. She was never a big playful cat. She had her moments of playful, but she was never like boisterous. She didn't run around. She never got the zoomies. She didn't jump around. But she was just extra lethargic that week. She sat around and just sat by that window waiting for him to come back for so long. It was so sad. And, eventually she realized he wasn't coming back and got to be herself again. But this is something we see with dogs too. We'll see dogs, especially if they lose their person. They'll grieve. And it's typical things you would think of with humans too, as far as lethargy, loss of appetite, maybe not feeling as playful. And with dogs especially, they have an automatic response when you touch, cuddle, pet, which is why they want pets so much. The oxytocin is released in their body and their brains. And this is something that happens even more so with another creature that they have bonded with, which is usually their human. So they get pleasure chemicals in their brain and their body when they're being touched by somebody they love. And when that person's no longer there, they're not getting that release. So it's even harder. But what can we do? Like, nobody wants to see a sad pet, right? Like, nobody wants to see a sad puppy. Because like I said, we anthropomorphize them to always be happy. So what can we do to help our pets? Well, first things first, I'm hoping somebody else would take over their care and they wouldn't just go to a shelter. Side note, in Canada, there is a really great organization called My Grandfather's Cat. Somebody started when her grandfather died and he had a cat, and she took the cat and she started wondering what happens to pets when their owners die and they don't have family to take those pets. So she created an organization to foster pets who have lost their people and find new homes for them, which amazing. I'm sure something like that exists here in the U.S. too somewhere, but if one of those hasn't started and you want to start a nonprofit, do that. I would hope that their pet would have a new person that would take care of them. Spending time with them, obviously, is key, right? They've lost that connection. I was just saying how when you pet or love on your pet, the oxytocin is released. So pet them, touch them, cuddle with them. Assuming, again, dogs and pets are like people. They all have a little bit different personalities. Assuming they are the type that want snuggles and pets, give them snuggles and pets. You have to make sure their physical needs and their emotional needs are being met, just like you would a person. Spend time with them, just like you would a person. Give them extra treats. Give them extra pets. Sometimes just hanging out and watching TV with them might be all they need, right? But just spending time with them, giving them extra affection. But also sometimes distracting them is a good thing. Especially if it's a younger dog who's used to going out and playing fetch or running with their person or playing outside, do those things with them. Spend a little extra time playing games. Maybe teach them new tricks. Teach if they never learn to shake or roll over. Teach them that, because dogs get excited when they do something that makes us happy. And if we do something and show that they're doing something fun and that makes us happy, they'll love that too. And if they're social dogs that are used to being around other dogs, take them to a dog park. Get them out and play with them. Think of it just like you would a human friend. Have those days where they need to just stay inside and be held, and stay inside and hold them. But then take them outside. Play with them. Give them some space to run around and be happy. Again, just remembering that all dogs are going to be a little bit different, and cats too. All pets are different. They have personalities, and anybody out there that says pets don't have a personality has never had a pet. I think all of us who are pet parents know our pets have a personality. I've got stories out the wazoo of Yuna and how she loved Doctor Who and hated Tom Jones. And if you think I'm kidding, ask anybody who met her. You play the Doctor Who theme and she comes running. You play Tom Jones song and she gets mad. What's wrong with Tom Jones? I don't know. So that's really all I had. I know this is a bit shorter of an episode, but it's an important one too, because we have to recognize that grief is not just a human concept. There are so many studies about elephants out there and their grieving, and crows. Crows have a grieving process too. I would venture to guess that most animals have a grieving process. But if you're ever bored one day, read up on elephants and grief. It is so fascinating how they grieve. And there are stories out there of elephants that have been studied who have lost a baby, like mother elephants who lost their baby, and they will go back to the spot where they lost them time and time again for years. It's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking to think about and to see. And they'll come together when an elephant dies. They'll circle around the body and they'll, trumpet their trunks and make noise and stomp the ground. And it's just, I could go all day. Maybe I'll do an episode on elephant grief sometime, but check that out sometime. It's so fascinating. Remember to love your furry little friends, or your scaly friends, or your feathered friends. Whatever your pet is, give them some love. All right. That's it for this week. Oh, I almost forgot the death deck. Guys, I said ope. I'm Midwestern, and I almost forgot the death deck. Let me grab that. Actually, before I do that, anecdotally, the day I'm recording this right now, it's raining. It's a very rainy, gloomy day. And my cat is being so sad. I don't even know what to do with him. He's been acting sad all day. He's currently laying next to his bed, where he usually lays in his bed, and he just has this ennui look on his face, and I don't know what to do. I'm going to give him extra snuggles. That's what I'm going to do. All right. So now we're on to the death deck. So I'm going to shuffle it up. And I'm going to pull one at random. Okay. This looks familiar. I may have read this before, but I've gone through this death deck so many times. Who knows? Whatever. I'm reading it anyway. After I kick the bucket, announce my death on social media. A, pretty quickly. I'd like everyone to know ASAP. B, never, please don't tweet my demise. Or C, whenever, I really don't care, I'm dead. Honestly, I would go with A for myself. It's not like the minute I take my last breath, put out a tweet, okay? Or an X. I don't know what you call them now. Twitter's now X. But honestly, I would just like people to know, because I would assume there would be some type of funeral or memorial service or celebration of life or whatever. And I'm sure the people that care about me would like to know about that too, so that they could attend. So if nothing else, just letting people know so that they can attend my memorial service. And yeah, so that's my answer. I would be really curious to know, nobody ever contacts me to give me answers to the death deck. Guys, please, I would love to hear from you. It's lonely be here behind my microphone all by myself. I would, seriously though, I really am very curious about your answer to the death deck questions I ask. So you can just message me directly through my website, nikkithedeathdoula.com, or you can message me privately on my social media platforms. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Nikki the Death Doula, or you can comment I post about my podcast episodes. So when I do that, you could just comment, I'd be like, oh, I listened to this episode. Here's my answer to the death deck question. That'd be nice. Yeah. So, and there, I just gave you all my social media handles. So if you want to go give me a follow or a like or whatever, that would be great. If you do nothing else today, give this podcast a rating or a review. Let me know how you feel about it. That's a great way for more people. If you really like my podcast and you want more people to find it, that's a great way you can do that. Let people know it exists. All right. That's enough. I hope all of you have an absolutely amazing week. And remember, as always, your grief is yours. Your feelings are valid. And grief doesn't always have to suck.